Podcasting from Heroes Media Group with real, relevant, and raw opinions. This is the College Sports Hour with your host, Clint McPherson, and co-host, Greg Dixon.
What's up, guys? You're listening to episode 6 of the College Sports Hour podcast, and we'll be talking about all the chaos that went down during Week 7 of the 2018 college football season. I'm your host, Clint, and I'm sitting here with co-host Greg. What's up, brother?
Hey, man, how's it going? Hope everybody's doing well. It is a beautiful day out here in this part of North Carolina, man. Hope everybody is doing fantastic.
Yeah, man, we are doing great in North Carolina. The weather is cool. It seems like perfect, college sports football weather. It's one of those things we get to enjoy. We're not sweating to death, so I'm really digging it right now.
Absolutely. Crisp temperatures in the air, leaves are changing colors. It can only mean that we are full-fledged into the college football season. And don't worry, because college basketball season's around the corner as well. Yeah!
Oh, yeah, man, right there. I mean, I know you're excited. Duke looks like, from their exhibitions, like they have something special on that end.
Hey, man, this Friday night is actually the countdown to madness, which is the official kickoff for Duke basketball. So, man, it's looking good. I'm excited about that season. But before we jump into that, we still got some football games to cover.
Yeah, man, let's do it. So on this episode, guys, we'll be talking about how the top 25 fared over the weekend, who took care of business, who fell short, how any of those upsets or losses impact their seasons moving forward, and address any final thoughts or surprises we might have from Week 7. We'll also talk about the new Week 8 top 25 AP rankings that came out today, highlight some important Week 8 matchups, and address who we have on upset alert heading into Week 8.
Hey, guys, and just a quick reminder, too, before we dive into everything, make sure you check out the College Sports Hour podcast on iTunes, Google Play Music, and YouTube under College Sports Hour. You can also find us on Facebook, our website, collegesportshour.com, and on the Heroes Media Group website under their show tabs. So don't forget to subscribe, like, and follow us as we continue the college sports conversation.
With that said, man, Week 7 of the 2018 college football season is in the books. And if I had one word to sum it up this week, man, I would use the word chaos, brother. Upset Saturday arrived in a huge way yet again, 2 weeks in a row. So this time sending more than a handful of ranked teams to losses. This weekend definitely trimmed down some of the college football playoff contenders. So we weeded out some of the pretenders. Of note, 4 top 10 teams lost on Saturday, but more importantly, 2 of them, Penn State and Washington, suffered their second losses of the season, which all but eliminates them from championship contention. And after Week 7, only 8 undefeated FBS teams remain. What did you make out of all the craziness that went down this past week, brother?
I thought last week was absolutely nuts, and then all of a sudden things started falling like they did on Saturday, and I was having a hard time keeping up with everything that was happening, flipping back and forth between games, trying to figure out, this game right here is getting a little tight, this game's getting a little crazy on this end, this game over here that I thought was going to be good is now a blowout, so I'm pushing that game aside, I'm not worried about that one anymore. Man, it was just a lot to keep up with. It made for a very interesting weekend.
I mean, without a doubt. My one regret during this week was not actually sitting behind the TV and watching every game I could. The reason for that is because I got tickets at the last minute to go to the ECU Houston game. And so my son was so excited about it, and I was like, at the last minute I almost changed my mind. I was like, man, I do not feel like going to watch East Carolina because I know their offense is hot, buttery. Who knows what's going on, but they lived up to that expectation when I arrived, and Houston put it to them. My son was, we had to be, on the DL. He was like, Dad, who's purple? The red team? I like red. Let's go for them. So we're like, we are secret Cougars for the game.
Oh, man.
We were giving each other fives, and I was like, man, you got to be hush hush. We're sitting in a crowd of purple people eaters over here, so you got to be careful, man.
Well, let's be honest with you. The Pirates of ECU have had a very rough season so far, and it doesn't look like things are going to get any better. I got quite a few friends that are Pirate alumni and Pirate fans, and it's fun to watch them on Twitter right now, kind of going back and forth at how, man, they are just absolutely disgusted with their team. So, but I hope you and your son had a good time at the game, man. I hope you guys made some memories, but you certainly did miss a few key moments in the college football world this past weekend, having to go to that game.
Oh man, I was like, man, why? This is the 1 week. I was like, why? Because I just didn't see some of this stuff happening. Like I said, chaos, just was in full effect, and I regretfully sat and missed most of it. So let's go. Let's move on, man. So coming into this week, we had several ranked teams that actually sat out week 7, so they weren't part of the madness. That was Clemson, Oklahoma, Kentucky, NC State, Mississippi State, and Cincinnati. So they, unfortunately, did not get to partake in the chaos, but maybe
they were happy they were sitting at home this weekend.
Exactly. Maybe rightfully so. They were very happy that they were actually sitting on the couch or doing whatever they were, watching the games.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt about that.
So here's how the top 25 fared during week 7 of the 2018 college football season. And so we're changing into the segment of who took care of business, who in the top 25 took care of business. And, the chaos really, this Friday night maybe was a telltale sign of what was to come.
I tell you what, man, who would have thought that, South Florida and Tulsa would be coming down to the wire like that? Geez, I mean, you got South Florida who's, was 5-0 going into the weekend, ranked number 23, and then you got a Tulsa team who's only coming into that game with one win on the season. So nobody had any expectations, really, I'm sure, about Tulsa coming in there and trying to upset South Florida. But it almost happened.
It did, man. And that's the name of the game for some of these teams, just surviving. South Florida, man, found themselves heading into that fourth quarter, trailing 24-10. And I was like, I had to keep, what's going on? I was like, I wasn't following the game. I was doing my Facebook Live at this time. But at the same time, I was like, I was following the game on the iPad. But at the same time, this was during my Facebook Live. And I was like, Tulsa's winning 24-10. South Florida's struggling. And, man, they find a way to stop Tulsa in that fourth quarter, and they score 15 unanswered. And Blake Barnett and the South Florida Bulls pull out a 25-24 win. Kudos to them for hanging on, man.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, that's what you got to do. I mean, the name of the game is to win. And so as long as you can come out with a victory, you're sitting pretty. But, man, being able to kick that field goal with 2 seconds left on the clock, man, that right there was huge. What a huge uplifting time for that way is. Something else there for South Florida is that, man, they did most of the damage on the ground in this game, rushing the ball 47 times for 250 yards, including 3 touchdowns right there, man. So South Florida, man, they were playing great. I mean, they kind of turned it around there in the fourth quarter and was able to play some great ball in that one quarter that was able enough for them to come away with a victory.
Yeah, like you said, that rushing game was huge for him because Blake Barnett behind center kind of was struggling, 17 for 39, 1 interception. So, man, that running game came through at the end. They pulled it out, and I'm glad to see South Florida hang on and stay undefeated.
Absolutely.
So let's move on to Saturday, man. This is, again, chaos, like I said. So we start off with a game that, we knew what was going to happen. Alabama was going to play a Missouri team and take care of business.
Whoa. You just flipped the script on me, didn't you? We just moved into the portion of things that people who didn't handle business. You mean Alabama won? What? Alabama beat Missouri? No. They came away with another win. God, can we just move past this one already?
I'm with you, man. I mean, Tua, I just wanted to bring it up because he, going in that slide, he had a little tweak in the knee. Yeah. So it was a cause for concern when he slid again and actually had to come out of the game. He still threw for 3 touchdowns. He didn't have his hottest performance. He was 12 for 22, but out of those 12 completions, 3 of them were for touchdowns.
What else is this guy going to do for the remainder of the season? I mean, like when the guy goes 12 for 22 for 265 and 3 touchdowns, and we're downplaying it like, he's had better games than that. Like, what else can this kid do? I mean, oh my gosh, I'm just sitting here going, let's just go ahead and give Alabama the national championship now, and let's be done with this thing already.
Well, see, a lot of people say they haven't played anybody yet. I got it. Of note, they've been blowing people out, and they really haven't had a stacked deck schedule-wise, but man, they're going and taking care of business. Obviously, man, somebody told me they struggled, and I was like, okay, they win by 29 points. That's 4 touchdowns. And we're talking about them struggling. That's sad. But they go in an SEC game where a lot of times some of these teams will struggle, and they took care of business.
As we will talk about here in the next few moments, we'll see about some other SEC teams that struggled and weren't able to win, and some teams that struggled and were able to win. But yeah, okay, Alabama struggled in the first quarter. The score was 13-10. And then they go on to score 26 unanswered points throughout the rest of the game. And this was the closest game they've had all year. Trust me, Alabama's not sweating anything right now.
I'm with you, man. So let's move on to a game that I really saw that surprised me, that I really saw Ohio State just blowing this team out because Minnesota's been struggling. They did have a hot start to the season, starting off at 3-0. They felt themselves, losers of the last 2 games. And so I didn't see, Coach Flick and his team rowing the boat too much, his little mantra he has going on. But Ohio State found themselves in a dogfight in the first half primarily. But again, it seems like Ohio State, that second half is theirs. So they took control of the game. Dwayne Haskins, again, puts up some huge numbers, 33 for 44, 412 yards and 3 touchdowns. Man, what's your take on this?
I tell you what, one of the things that I wrote in my notes here about this game was that this is one of those games that you would have hoped to see Ohio State do more, but they didn't deliver. And I don't know if this is just one of those games where you're not putting a whole lot of emphasis on as a player because it's Minnesota and, they don't really pose that big of a threat. The one thing that I kind of took away from this game is that if Ohio State is going to be there to compete with Alabama towards the end of this year, then they've got to do something about that running game. Ohio State struggled there, running the ball 32 times for only 92 yards. Yeah, Haskins had a great game, 412 yards and 3 touchdowns. Man, that's fantastic. But you're going to have to be able to run that ball, especially against that Alabama defense. You're going to have a little bit better of a consistency there on both sides, being able to throw and run the ball if you're going to be able to beat that team.
Yeah, the surprise for me in this game was how effective Minnesota was on the ground. I mean, coming into the game, I want to say that the 2 rushing touchdowns that the running back had, that was the first 2 of the year. And that might be wrong in saying that, but I mean, I know they haven't been running the ball effectively. They've been struggling in that area, but they found ways to get in the end zone in that first half and make it a game. But again, like I said, second half was all Ohio State, and they put it in cruise control from there.
Absolutely.
So let's go on to Pitt, man. This was a shocker to me. They had Notre Dame on the ropes the entire game, man.
Pittsburgh seems to be a team that is developing a little bit of a reputation that is in there for knocking off teams that are ranked in the top 5. Last year, they were able to knock off Clemson, who was ranked number 3 at the time. The year before that, they knocked off Miami, who was ranked number 2 at the time. And for the last several years, Pittsburgh and Notre Dame have always had these games, man. It's been a one-possession game, and they're really, really close. And so Notre Dame, kind of gets comes off of a big win last week against a Virginia Tech team, as well as a win off of Stanford the week before that. So they're coming in here with some emotional wins and maybe not quite up for Pittsburgh like they should have been, and it showed.
Yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh surprised me. Obviously, they had a good showing against Syracuse, winning in overtime in that game. But the real story was how Ian Book overcome some of this adversity. He threw a 35-yard touchdown pass to Miles Boykin with 5:43 remaining. And helped them to that victory. But, man, I kept looking at my phone during this game and because I didn't get to sit and watch it because I was traveling over there to Greenville. And I was like, man, Ian Book's having a good game. He's 26 for 32, 264 yards with 2 touchdowns, but he had 2 crucial picks. So that was the thing that, kind of probably limited them to doing more damage. But, again, man, Pittsburgh did whatever they could to keep this game close, but Notre Dame in the end found a way to pull it out.
And I mean that's what you got to do, but it does kind of bring up the questions that people have had about Notre Dame kind of for this entire season. Is that they're ranked up there in the top 5, but are they really a national title contender at this point in time in their career?
Yeah, we'll see though, man. It seems like though every team that is on top, and I think Miami, or when I say Miami, but Miami's on the mind because of the epic, meltdown they had. But going back, Alabama. Alabama's been on cruise control, but they're going to have a game where they face adversity, where they don't have everything clicking.
Sure.
It seems like every team throughout the year has this. And hopefully for Notre Dame and their team, even though they've played a couple close games, Michigan's won. But Pittsburgh, man, I just didn't see this happening. I give the Pittsburgh team a lot of props for making this a game. They're in the ACC, which is struggling right now. But man, Notre Dame stays undefeated.
Absolutely.
Let's move on to another game. It was like, watch out, guys. I'm on the Texas bandwagon, obviously, because of the momentum they built up. Finally, it's taken me a while to say that, but man, this was like, okay, let's see if they can actually beat a Baylor team. Are they continuing to take the right steps in the right direction? And again, they found themselves in a fight in this game too. Texas obviously comes up big in that second quarter to score 20 points. To kind of, jump out to a larger lead than Baylor was able to overcome. And the rest of the game in the second half was more of a defensive battle.
Well, you're kind of looking at that, they too faced some adversity in that game, a little bit like Alabama did when they saw Sam Eilinger, their starting quarterback, go down in the first quarter with an injury to his shoulder. And, they're still waiting to hear back the reports on that, wondering, if it's going to be anything that's going to keep him out long term or anything along those lines. And so they bring in their quarterback, Shane Buechele, I believe is how you pronounce that last name, and he comes in to lead the Longhorns. So they were able to keep this game intact and win it. But, I think all our eyes are on that starting quarterback and wondering what's going to happen there with Eilinger.
Yeah, because, man, it's going to change that momentum. Everything they got going for him could come to a screeching halt with him not being behind that QB position. But we'll see, man. Hopefully he recovers. Hopefully he can jump back in it and continue to help Texas win. All right, man, another game. It seems like the Florida teams, what's going on? Another undefeated, the self-proclaimed, Central Florida. They're playing a Memphis team. They're going into Memphis, playing a Memphis team that typically upsets teams. And, man, Memphis had the upset of brewing. They scored 30 points in the first half. I don't know if Central Florida was ready for the jabs and the uppercuts Memphis was throwing throughout this game. But again, the second half, these teams are finding a way to win the game.
It is that tale of two halves there. It is the idea that you've got to play all four quarters and you got to put it all together. And when you're right, man, when you look up at the scoreboard at halftime and you see that Memphis is up on UCF 30-17, it is sitting there kind of making you scratch your head saying, what's going to happen? Is this going to be another one of those games? Is this going to be another one of those weeks? But yet UCF is able to turn the momentum, to change it there in that third quarter. In my opinion, that game completely changed when Taj McGowan took that ball 71 yards for the touchdown. Man, that completely shifted everything around, put the momentum squarely in UCF's hands, and man, they began to really knock down that wall and came away with a victory.
Yeah, I'm glad they were actually able to pull this one out. I really like the quarterback in Mackenzie Milton. He's somebody that excites me, just like a Blake Barnett from South Florida. You got these quarterbacks that are impressive, playing for some smaller level teams. Obviously, Central Florida's like a smaller level, man. We're in this. We're self-proclaimed national champions last year. We're currently finding ourselves at 6-0 on this year. Obviously, Blake Barnett and Central Florida with Milton have to go head-to-head. So that's going to be, hopefully, during that time, they're both undefeated. We'll see how the story unfolds there. But I like what Central Florida is doing right now.
Well, they're continuing to keep it running, and as you mentioned, they keep the nation's longest winning streak. It stays intact for another week.
Yeah, man, I like that. So let's move on to this. I really saw Wisconsin be able to get this running game going to a certain degree.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you have a Michigan team that is by far, since that Notre Dame game, has had one of the best defenses in the nation. They have been limiting, yards per game, holding opponents to low scores. And so Michigan, basically, man, this team, I wasn't a buyer in them, but they've turned their season around, it seems.
Michigan has absolutely, especially with the games over the last couple of weeks, man, has changed my opinion about this team. And, man, I'm right there with you. I'm a believer in these Michigan Wolverines and, man, how they're playing, especially how they played since specifically over the last couple of weeks since the Northwestern game, and I mean, really gotten that things moving. I got to give some props to Shea Patterson too. I mean, I think he took a little bit of heat at the beginning of the season for the way that he was or was not playing the quarterback position in that Jim Harbaugh offense. But man, he got some things going this particular week, and 14 of 21 for 124 yards. That's not hot. That's not sexy or anything like that. But I mean, it's efficient. It's not a turnover prone or anything like that. But he also added 9 rushes for 99 yards and a touchdown. So, you throw that in there, and then you look at how well Michigan ran the ball 48 times for 320 yards and 3 touchdowns. Yeah, they flipped the script on Wisconsin and was able to run the ball where Wisconsin wasn't.
Yeah, and this game was, low scoring affair in the first half, and the Michigan just, again, a tale of two tales. They come out and just full throttle in the second half and pull this one out 38-13. Let's move on to another game that was very interesting. This was the one I was actually sitting and watching before I ended up leaving. Florida versus Vanderbilt. Typically not a game I'm going to sit down and watch, but Vanderbilt had Florida on the ropes. Vanderbilt had Florida. I mean, I was saying this past week that Florida seemed like they have an elite defense, and then Vanderbilt was just punching holes in that defense, and I'm like, what is going on? And I know Vanderbilt plays teams tough, good teams tough, and so it was one of those things. There was coaches fighting, and a player was injured on the sideline. You had almost coaches like just going at it. Like both sides cleared, basically the bench, and they're all like, what's going on? It was a little bit of excitement, but at the same time, stupidity.
You always see some chippiness amongst the players, but when you start seeing the coaches starting to get into it, it really makes you begin to take a second look at what's going on there. And I don't know that either coach is really commenting all that much in detail about what all transpired really in the midst of all that. But, man, we did see a Vanderbilt team that came to play against Florida, man, up 21-3 midway through the second quarter. Man, that was crazy. And then the Gators really began to put in their massive and impressive comeback from behind there to get a victory there. That 37-27 final score, in my opinion, is a little misleading about how this game was really feeling for the majority of that game. Man, Florida was able to run the ball extremely effectively 63 times. I kind of had to go back and look at that and make sure they actually ran the ball 63 times. But they did for 292 yards, including 2 running backs, topping the 100-yard mark. So, I mean, that's a pretty impressive stat in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, P. Ryan was the one showing out for that team. He was rushing, and he had the receiving yards to go with it. He had 23 carries, 121 yards, 1 touchdown, and then 4 receptions for 93 yards. So, man, he was the workhorse for the Gators. He actually helped them, really get into it. Felipe Franks had a decent day, 19 for 29, 284 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But, again, Florida's going to have to play better, especially when they have some of these bigger matchups coming on. But, I mean, man, they get the job done. They fell behind, faced some adversity, and actually pulled this one out.
Well, when you're thinking about the SEC East and you're thinking about this Florida team and you're thinking about Georgia and you're thinking about Kentucky, if those are your top 3 teams right now, it really gives you a head scratcher right now as to who's going to come out of there.
Yeah, man. So let's move on to the Texas A&M South Carolina game, where I thought, Jimbo Fisher and the Aggies were just going to cruise to this one. That was not the case. It looked like that in the first half. South Carolina, the Gamecocks found themselves down 13-0, couldn't get anything going offensively. There was a couple miscues there, but man, they crawled right back into this game with having that huge third quarter, and man, they fell short. They lost 26-23, but at the same time, Jimbo Fisher, I don't know if he's too happy with his team by letting South Carolina get back into the game, but it's par for this week.
Well, you're exactly right. And once again, it's another team going on the road. And I don't care what conference you're in. You're trying to get a win on the road, man, is always going to be difficult. And if you're going to be an elite team, if you're going to be a good team, you got to find ways to scrap and claw and do that. And, man, Texas A&M, they let South Carolina back into the game there in that third quarter where, it looked like they had the game in hand. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, you blink and you turn around and, man, the game is tied up heading into the fourth quarter. So to see Texas A&M come, still kind of keep their composure, still be able to win that game, I thought I was actually a little impressed with them to be able to do that and still come away with that victory.
Yeah, I like the quarterback still, man. Kellen Mond, he had a huge day. He obviously didn't convert, too many touchdown passes, but, having a 25 for 37, 353 yards and a touchdown pass, that's pretty impressive.
And their field goal kicker, Small, was able to connect on 4 or 5 field goals to secure that win as well. So, props to him.
Yeah, man, that's huge. So, here we go. Who in the top 25 did not take care of business? This is the part of the show that I get excited about most.
Almost as many teams as did take care of business.
Exactly, man. This, like we said at the beginning, this was something that I didn't see this game going the way it happened. I knew it was going to be a dogfight. I knew it was going to be a lot closer than a lot of people were saying, because everybody was like Georgia, because LSU had that off week last week, didn't get anything going. But like I said, man, LSU has an elite defense, and it's hard. Jake Fromm and the Georgia Bulldogs, that first half was really the thing I think that sealed the deal, because they found themselves behind 16-0 going into the half, and they only scored 16 points in the entire game.
If everybody remember last week in our podcast, we were talking about the games that we had highlighted about what could potentially show up as an upset. And this was the game that I had circled on there. I really thought, LSU coming off of that loss to Florida from last week, that they were going to be hungrier to come in there, and I was scared of Georgia's slow starts. And then I kind of kept watching, and I kept reading and kept looking at some different things about Georgia. And then there was Paul Feinbaum. And he messed me up, man. He said, he's the one who jumped in there and said, bunch of people picking LSU, but it's going to be Georgia. Watch Georgia roll. And I was like, all right, I'm going to roll with Paul on this one. I'm not going to roll with Paul ever again, man. Paul led me astray for the second week in a row. I did not go with my heart on one of these games, and, saw LSU come in there. And, look, Georgia didn't get beat. Georgia got destroyed. LSU wiped the floor. I mean, this game really wasn't all that. It wasn't all that competitive for the most part of the game. Coach O having his aggressive play calling in there, going forward on fourth downs. Joe Burrow playing a really good, having a great bounce back game from the previous week, and then Jake Fromm, man, really not doing a whole lot, man, out of sync for a lot of the afternoon. And now I hear a lot of people beginning to question about if it's time for Kirby Smart to move on from Fromm and go to that backup quarterback they got there, the more athletic guy who can make some plays with his feet. Fields, I believe, is his name.
Yeah, I don't know if I could put it all on Fromm. Fromm did not have a good afternoon, but he did. There were some crucial drops. He didn't get any help from his receiving core. There were some passes that should have been caught. There's some chain movers. I mean, it was like, man, if some of those kids would have stepped up and did what they were supposed to do, it could have been a different story.
Sure.
Obviously, it didn't happen that way, and LSU did dominate this game, any way you look at it. But, I mean, Georgia, just like they've sputtered on offense. They really sputtered in this game. And then when you have Jake Fromm not being very accurate in this game, and then his team not having his back and actually making some of these big plays, that right there is just a recipe for disaster.
I think the other thing to look at here as well is that, what's one of the things that Georgia likes to do? They like to run the ball. And when you get down by as many points as they got down with early, you can't really establish that running game. And so you become one-dimensional at that point. And that was kind of felt like the beginning of the end, so to speak, for them.
Yeah, man, Coach O, he came out there aggressive. I like that, like you said. I mean, he showed he came in. He's like, we're going to win this game. If we lose it, it's going to be on me. But he was determined that they would not have a repeat of last week. He came in there, definitely proved that, and his team finds themselves in a good position in the rankings. They jump huge in the rankings.
Absolutely,
and find themselves looking pretty right now. All right, man. This game right here was just, for me, a big letdown. You called it. I have to give you props on this. There was a big part of me that says, Iowa State, they're dream killers sometimes. I've seen years where you're like, the Cyclones, what? And then they beat a Colorado. They beat a West Virginia. Right. They beat somebody, and they're like, they've only won one game on the year or something. And you're like, what? But, man, like you said, that backup quarterback, or he's the QB1 now, he was inserted last week. He gives them another dimension. And Will Grier is taking he's declining. He's taking steps in the wrong direction. And I don't know what to make of this West Virginia team. I was firm. I was buyers in them. I wanted to believe in them. I was riding it. I was like, look, they're number 6 in the nation. They're not going to slip against Iowa State. But I did say it could happen.
Yeah, sure. And once again, it's another one of those conference road games. They're always hard to come by with a win. But I think, I did look at this game and think that there was a good chance that Iowa State could come away with a victory. I don't know that I could have predicted what would have happened in that second half. Man, to see them shut down the Mountaineers the way that they did, holding them to 152 yards and 0 points in the second half, that surprised me. I thought that Will Grier would put up better numbers than what he did. Tough game, man, 11 of 15 for only 100 yards. You're not going to win a whole lot of games going that route. And, man, Iowa State's defense showed up. And you're right, man. Brock Purdy, the new QB1 in Iowa State, he had himself another great game.
Yeah, I didn't know what to make of this game, really, because, I know West Virginia's coming off that Kansas win where, they had some red zone issues. They had, Will Grier he couldn't take care of the ball as good as he would have liked to have, with 4 interceptions. But, man, 100 yards, Will Greer. It seemed like, they pulled him back. It almost was like, hey, you had a bad performance last week, but he did enough to win, and then it seemed like their game plan was just not there. And Iowa State, the Cyclones just dominate this game, like really from the beginning.
Yeah, sure enough. We were actually out to eat Saturday night, and they had this game on the screen. I'm sitting there watching it, and I'm looking at the guy who's sitting across from me. I'm going, look, watch him. They're gonna win. I picked this game. I was so excited about actually having been able to pick an upset correctly. So
yeah, man, because one thing we've been proven this year in any of our predictions are that we don't know anything, man.
Yeah,
we can read
right.
this. It really comes down to everybody. It's like, you can do as much research, you can study all these teams, but man, any given Saturday, one of these teams is just going to blow your mind. Like, and this week and last week are two perfect examples of that.
And there's another game like that that's coming up here in just a few moments that we'll talk about.
Yeah, but man, what did you think about Iowa State's the black uniforms? I was digging it.
Oh, dude, I'm sitting there going, I know that less is more kind of deal, and you can't do it all the time, but I'm sitting there going, man, especially in those night games like that, you need to be wearing that pretty much every single week.
Yeah, man, and fortunately for them, they came out and showed out in all black. There's a lot of times where teams do the all black and then they just epically flop. Florida State.
There's a little jab in there for you.
So let's move on to the Washington. This is another game you called, man. The Washington-Oregon game. Again, I've said it all year. I don't know what to make of this Washington team. I don't like how they've been playing. They got Jake Browning. They got, and for some reason, this offense cannot figure out a way to click. This was a very good game, though.
Absolutely.
It wasn't, disappointing by no means, but I'm just waiting one of these weeks that Jake Browning of Washington will have everything clicking on offense. But this week, it wasn't the week, and Oregon finds a way to win in overtime 30-27.
Well, you're probably going to see that offense click at some point in time, but unfortunately it's not going to matter now because they are pretty much out of the national title conversation with this loss to Oregon. This game right here was a coin flip for just about anybody and everybody, man. You could go either way on this. You can make a great case for Washington to try to win this game or Oregon to win this game. But, man, my opinion was this was certainly a game that delivered if you were just simply a fan of college football that was looking for a good game to watch. Man, they kept going back and forth and tit for tat, man. One team would score and the other team would score, defensive stop after defensive stop. And it really came down to which team was going to make a play. And Washington had the chance to win the game. They're at the end of the regulation. They had a chance to kick the field goal and make it. Oregon kind of tried to do their best to try to ice that kicker a couple of times there with a couple of timeouts. But it ended up working for him, and he was able to – he certainly missed it there at the end of regulation going into overtime. And, Washington had to – they got the ball first. They settled for the field goal there in the first round of their overtime, and then Oregon would not be denied with their running back C.J. Verdell running in from 6 yards out to seal the victory for Oregon to run away with that win.
Dude, the way that game ended, I don't even think anybody touched him. He ran right up the middle. I'm sitting there thinking to myself, geez, like that's a great way to lose this game. Nobody was even in position to stop this guy.
Right.
He just found an open lane and it was to the house. I mean, it's typically Oregon has these speed demons on their team. That's one of them. He took it to the house. They find themselves in a good position at 5-1. Their only hiccup, man, was that Stanford game. I know they're kicking themselves in the foot.
That they should have won.
Exactly,
man. They
should
have won.
They had that game. But, hey, it's never over.
To quote a great guy, Denny Green, we had him, and we let him off the hook.
No doubt, man. I like that. So, this was
okay.
This basically had my mind. Like, if I had explosives in my head, they would have went off. And so I don't have nothing for this. When you as a James Franklin led team get on there and you lose a close one to Ohio State and then proclaim your team as being great but not elite, and then you come out and lose to an average Michigan State team, they do see themselves at 4-2, which their record is more impressive than what they've done this year. But man, when you get on there and proclaim your team to be great, and you slip up in a game like this and blow the game like you did, and the offense just was not clicking, man, I don't know what to say about Penn State.
Penn State is another one of those games right there where you had a chance, and you had several chances to win this game, to put it away, and you just couldn't do it for whatever reason, mistakes, mental lapses, mental errors. I don't know, but you come off of an off week, off of your bye week there. You've been sitting and thinking about this Ohio State loss, man. I really expected Penn State to come out gangbusters. I expected them to come out with some fireworks. I expected them to really pound it into the ground and prove to the world, hey, we are a great, great team. And it just, man, they didn't happen, man. Things. It was one of those things that it just felt like, you had chances and you had opportunities here, and for whatever reason, man, you just didn't take advantage of them.
Yeah, it's one of those things that James Franklin and anybody, typically when they predict something or say something, they put their foot in their mouth. And man, when I watch that game, Penn State is not a great team. Obviously, they again, it's very close. I mean, this is typically a huge game. But Michigan State found themselves, they have a struggling secondary, but the secondary was able to hold Trace McSorley, to a respectable game. I thought Michigan State's defense was going to be able to slow Penn State's rushing attack down a little bit more, which they didn't. But man, you got to give Michigan State a lot of props for actually coming down and slowing that offense down.
Hey, well, you know what? You hang in there. You're able to win the game there in the last minute. I mean, to put this game in your pocket and get out of there with a win when you're a heavy underdog coming in there. You're not the Michigan State that everybody has expected you to be. And golly, man, get mad props to the Spartans.
Yeah, man, that non-tackle. I don't know what that one guy for Penn State needs some tackling lessons. Like that close to the goal line, buddy, you got to step up and actually, maybe Michigan State still scores, but dude, you got to actually learn how to tackle.
Put a little bit better effort into there.
Exactly, man. So that again, that was a game that made the head kind of explode on the inside. But here's another game, man. The turnover chain. Virginia beats Miami. I say it. Virginia beats Miami, where a lot of people didn't give them a lot of much of a chance.
Yep.
Perry struggles. He throws two quick interceptions at the beginning of the game. Mark Richt panics and then switches to Malik Rozier, and it's one of those things. I think he hit the panic button maybe a little too soon. Miami couldn't get anything going. Virginia was stifling, on defense, and they pulled the game out 16-13.
Well, let's give credit where credit is due. There is a certain individual on this podcast who predicted that Miami would lose this game, and it's not me. So good job to you for predicting the rightfully so, man, that Virginia would come in and get a win out of this game. Man, their defense shocked the mess out of me in this game. Miami came in averaging 41.5 points. 41.5 points, and they scored 13 in this game.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay, man, they're holding it down from 190 yards in the air and 149 yards on the ground. Man, that's impressive to me. Forcing 3 interceptions and hold on to win that game, man. Golly, Cavaliers shaking things up there in the top 25.
Yeah, man, and it just goes to prove. I mean, Miami, it's hard. It's always funny when somebody, teams are proclaiming we're back, we're in it, and all this stuff, and then again, man, they come out and execute like they did against a Virginia team that a lot of people didn't give a chance to. The reason I went with Virginia this week is I like what they did last week. And they pulled off, they had a good win there, and it seemed like, they had a little bit of the momentum. Miami, I think, was a little too high on themselves, and they got, again, brought back to reality in this game. And Mark Richt, I mean, he hit the panic button quick, man. He hit eject on that young quarterback like before you could even really. He was like, eject button, eject. Let's go back. And by that time, man, I was like, dude, it's too late.
I hadn't even got off the runway yet, hitting the eject button.
Oh man. So okay, moving on to the Tennessee Auburn game. Another game that I was like, we've been saying Auburn's not that good this year.
Yep.
I've seen Tennessee play. Tennessee, they look good sometimes and they look bad the majority of the time. The good Tennessee showed up in this game and actually put it to Auburn. It was a very interesting game. The first half saw Auburn winning 17-13. But again, the tale of two tales. That second half, Tennessee really dominated, scoring 14 points in that third quarter and hanging on for that win.
We said this last week. We said this the week before that, and we may have said it the week before that. I don't know what to do with Auburn. They are that team that's out there, that's still out there, that still, man, I feel like the broken record here. They don't know who they are. They don't know, they don't know their identity or anything like that. And man, golly, to lose to Tennessee like this, and to have the game and then to lose it as Tennessee came from behind, they rallied and won this game in the second half. Man, I tell you what, I know there's going to be a lot of questions that are being had against this Auburn team and wondering where they go from here, and probably already starting to look towards next season at this point and what happens around the coaching staff at this point.
Yeah, and I was really impressed with Tennessee's quarterback, Jarrett Garantino. I believe that's how you pronounce his name, but he was dropping dimes, dude. He was 21 for 32, 328 yards and 2 touchdowns, but there was one pass that just was so impressive, throwing it into the end zone. And again, like, he was dropping dimes on this secondary. And again, you've got to give Tennessee props for coming out ready to play. I didn't give them a chance to win this game because I've seen I should have looked at this Auburn team and said, look, sure, Tennessee can beat them. But,
right.
And again, I don't know what to make of this Auburn and Gus Malzahn team. It just doesn't seem like they have everything. What is it? I don't know, but I can't put my fingers on it. They're just not as good as advertised.
Well, we didn't put this game in our top 10 predictions because you look at it and it's like, okay, Auburn's coming off of a loss, but man, they should. It's Tennessee. They should be able to handle Tennessee, and man, was I surprised at this one.
Yeah, man. So. That basically wraps up the top 25, who took care of business, who didn't take care of business. So thoughts or impressions after Week 7. The biggest surprises for me during Week 7 in the top 25 was how teams that claim to be great, like Penn State, I've already mentioned it, lose to teams like Michigan State that just haven't been able to put it all together this year. Arizona State was able to beat them. And how uncompetitive teams like West Virginia, who I thought would really be up for this Iowa State game. They just didn't put any points on the board. They struggled in that second half. Will Greer, his Heisman hopes take a hit, struggling 2 weeks in a row. I don't even think he's going to be in the conversation going forward anymore. Obviously, he can put up some big numbers later in the year. I just, I don't see that really, helping him out or his case in any way with them having, that loss like they did and that bad performance against Kansas. But another one, man, for me was Georgia's inability to get anything going in that first half against LSU, and it really didn't do them any favors falling behind as much as they did.
Yeah, man. I think one of the key takeaways for me, or one of the surprises, if you want to put it there, was the way that Michigan dominated Wisconsin. And I didn't see that. I don't think most people saw that. College game day. All this. The hoopla surrounded that. And I hadn't really been high on Michigan this entire year. And man, I just did not see them dominating Wisconsin the way that they did.
Yeah, I agree with you, dude. I'm there with you. I really thought Wisconsin, I know Michigan has a good defense. I thought Wisconsin was going to get a little bit more with that ground game going. I knew it was going to be tough yards, but I figured they would be able to figure it out. They did not. Michigan runs away with that one, like we said earlier in the broadcast, that, they took care of that game. They're taking care of business right now. And again, man, when your only loss is to Notre Dame, you're in good position. They find themselves in number 6 in these new rankings, prime position, sitting 2 spots behind Notre Dame, which find them themselves undefeated at the number 4 spot. So Michigan is in good position right now.
Oh, absolutely. They're not the only ones that are sitting there like that, but you gotta give those guys credit, man, that they didn't, kind of fold things up after that Notre Dame loss. You very well could have said, well, there goes our season. If we don't, we gotta run the table here. And they got some tough matchups coming down the road too. It's not like it's a cakewalk from here on out, but they got themselves sitting there looking good that they can control their own destiny still.
No, without a doubt. So the new top 25 Week 8 AP poll is out. Alabama obviously continues to find themselves at number 1. Ohio State. He's like, what? Alabama?
Yeah. Surprise of the year.
Ohio State finds himself at number 2. Clemson 3. Notre Dame 4. LSU 5. Man, LSU cracks the top 5 with that huge win. Michigan moves up to 6. Texas 7. Georgia 8. Falls to 8. Oklahoma 9. They had a bye week. Central Florida closes out the top 10. Not getting much love. They were there, before. Not going to move too much. You're going to see a lot of one-loss teams, possibly 2-loss teams, stay in front of them. So what are they gonna do to really make that a statement for them to jump up in the rankings? I don't know. I don't even think there's a possibility. A lot of people are liking their chances if they do go undefeated. But again, man, I don't see the committee giving Central Florida much love with some of the matchups and the strengths of schedule. I don't know.
I tell you, there's some different things. There's some moves and some shakers happening around this top 25. I don't know that I saw LSU jumping up as many spots as they did with that win over Georgia. Yeah, it was a huge win, but I mean, you were just at number, was it 6 they were at 2 weeks ago before they lost to Florida, and then fell out of the top 10, went down to 12 or 13, and then they beat number 2 team in the nation, so they're back up there in the top 5 now. I mean, you talk about a little bit of hot potato there. So I don't know that I saw them jumping up that many spots. That's happening there. I'm sitting here looking at West Virginia as at number 13, and there's only one loss team, there's two one-loss teams that are still hanging out there, or 3 or so. So I thought West Virginia might drop a little bit further down than what they did after the loss to Iowa State, especially just kind of how ugly that was, tagged onto the fact of how they played the previous week as well. But I got some teams that had not been previously ranked before that jumped in there as well this week. So, good stuff that's happening for Iowa. Got in there at number 19. Michigan State got in there for 24, and then Washington State's in there at 25.
Oh, man. And so some of the teams that dropped from the rankings, obviously Miami, Colorado, and Auburn. Miami found themselves at number 16 position coming into that game. They ended up losing against Virginia. Colorado loses to USC. Auburn loses to dude, that game to Tennessee just blows my mind, but whatever. It is what it is.
Yeah.
So moving on to week 8, man. So the games of note. You just mentioned the team that a lot of College Game Day thinks is real deserving. They took that flag around to all the old Crimson. They've been toting it around to all the College Game Days, and for the first time ever, College Game Day will head to Pullman as number 25 Washington State hosts number 12 Oregon. What are your thoughts on that?
I tell you what, I put a lot of stock into teams being on the road, and also to the fact of teams the weeks they came off previous and how much energy they had to expel, how much emotion. You sitting there, you're looking at Oregon, who just came off of that huge upset win against Washington, and now they're traveling to Washington State. Washington State's going to be hungry. They're still out there trying to prove to themselves, and prove to everybody else that they're a team to be reckoned with. Oregon's got a great quarterback there. There's a lot of conversation about him and what he'll be doing on Sundays in the next year or maybe 2. Could be a top 5 pick in the next year's NFL draft. So, that has the potential to be a really good game. I think College Game Day made a good choice heading out that direction.
Yeah, I like what Washington State's doing, but man, you got to look at it this way. They're only passing the ball. Like I want to say this is a Mike Leach led team that is. I don't know how many yards they have rushing this year, but I'm pretty sure majority of their games they've been ending with 0. So I don't know if that's much in their game plan. Again, they find themselves in the top 25 at 5-1. They crawl their way into it. But is a team that just strictly passes the rock the whole entire game going to really be able to beat Oregon when they can, pull their ears back and just focusing on that pass? Maybe Washington State surprises and actually runs the ball.
That would be shocking.
So let's move to a game that I was thinking that could have, and maybe it was entertained a little bit by College Game Day because you have a battle of 2 unbeatens in the ACC. So this is basically the ACC matchup of the week. It pits number 3 Clemson versus number 16 NC State. Obviously, NC State finds themselves undefeated, not getting much love in the rankings right now. But, hey, if they can beat the number 3 ranked Clemson Tigers, I don't know if you can disregard them. You can actually probably take them seriously, even though they don't have any big wins to date. That one, if they can pull that off, which Finley already quoted, he was like, man, we're going to go and win this game. So it's one of those things that, hey, if they can do certain things, if they can protect the ball, there's a lot of things that can go into play here. But, man, NC State pulling off the upset against Clemson, do you think this happens?
I tell you what, man, it very well could happen if for no other reason than the fact that NC State always seems to play Clemson tough. It's always close when those two collide. It doesn't matter if NC State's any good or not. When Clemson's good, they've got to watch out for this little hiccup game. NC State has the knack and has the potential there to really do some damage against teams that are, have national championships on their mind. They've done it for years against Clemson. They've done it for years against Florida State. So it very well could happen. Man, if NC State could get that running game going, and they can, and that's a tall order against this Clemson defense, especially the fact that they've had a little bit of time to rest as well. They're coming into this game off of their bye week too. We'll see what happens, but man, this could certainly be a game that surprises a lot of people around the country.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to keep my eye on this one. This is going to be very interesting to me. And so we're going to move on to the SEC matchup of the week, obviously, where Coach O, the LSU Tigers, are going to take on Mississippi State. Again, a team sitting at number 22 I'm really not sold on. But, hey, Mississippi State, quarterback Fitzgerald, they could step up and make this a game. LSU better not overlook them because they can find themselves in a tough position if they suffer that second loss. But Coach O is going to have that team ready.
He's definitely going to have that team ready, but this Mississippi State team is not going to be the same Mississippi State that we saw at the beginning of the year. We saw in the previous game, right before they went on their off week, that they really cut Fitzgerald loose and allowed him not only to throw the ball, but also to run the ball. So this is going to be a completely different quarterback than what they saw in Jake Fromm of Georgia this past week. He's going to have the potential there to really run around the field a lot, make some plays with his feet. He's a big boy. He can hurt you. So, man, you're right. They don't need to look past this Mississippi State team. LSU looks like they're on they got the ship righted there after that loss to Florida. But man, we also know that any team or any game each week, man, anything can happen.
Without a doubt. Let's move on to the last matchup of the week that we ended up picking. It's in the Big Ten. We have number 6 Michigan at number 24 Michigan State. So the Wolverines and the Spartans are going to square off. Michigan's coming off a huge win. Michigan State's coming off a huge win. Man, this game could go either way.
Throw the rankings out the window, throw the records out the window. You have Michigan versus Michigan State going into a rivalry game with a lot on the line here. So you better believe that both coaches with both teams, they're going to come out with fire in their eyes, and, man, they are going to be ready to play this game. And this is going to be one of those coin flip, going to come down to the very end, I do believe.
Yeah, man, I'm with you on that. So here we are, brother. We find ourselves out of all the top 25 matchups that we have for Week 8. Who do you have on upset alert?
Well, you know what, man? I think we've kind of highlighted it already, to be completely honest with you. But I'm really looking hard at number 3 Clemson versus number 16 NC State. That game right there. Once again, not a great believer in NC State or anything like that at this point. They don't have anything on their record to indicate that. They are undefeated. They've beat the teams that are on their record, and now they're squarely looking at Clemson right now, and this could be the upset heard around the world this weekend.
I mean, I'm there with you. I think when you look at it on paper again, I mean, week 6 and week 7, a lot of people didn't see the mayhem and chaos that was going to happen. There were some people calling for it, some people like us saying some of these teams are going to take care of business. That didn't happen. Chaos, just was in full effect. And then we're going to week 8, and I'm looking at this. I'm like, okay, Tennessee, is it Alabama's time to struggle? I don't know. Maybe not. But like I said, I'm looking at this NC State game. I was there. When they played, who were they playing? This last game that I went to, it wasn't very impressive.
Right.
Was Boston College? Yeah, Boston College.
That's right.
Yeah. So I was at the BC game, and it was like, okay, can this team beat Clemson? I don't think so, but man, if they come out strong and fast like they did against BC, even though they faltered towards the end of that game and holding on. They have a chance, and like you said, NC State plays Clemson historically. It's close. It's going to be one of those games that comes to the end. It's almost like a Miami Florida State. It's going to be a close game. Is it going to be a Syracuse Clemson close? We'll see. Typically, could come down a field goal, whatever it is. But hey, NC State has a chance in this game, and that when I look at the schedule right now, I don't like Mississippi State beating the LSU team. I don't think Michigan's going to slip against Michigan State, even though it's going to be a close game.
Right.
I see those teams really taking care of it. But, man, Clemson with that young quarterback, he's faced a little bit of adversity, but, he didn't look that crisp in his last game. I don't think he played the whole entire game, but it's one of those things that NC State Finley, he's a veteran quarterback. I think he will have that offense ready, but he cannot, and I repeat, cannot make some of those mistakes that he did against Boston College for them to be successful.
Oh, absolutely. They're going to. I mean, NC State's going to have to play its best game of the season, by far. I mean, they can't be turning the ball over. They can't be putting the ball on the ground. They've got to make their catches. They've got to run their routes. Defense has got to be able to play disciplined ball, staying in their gaps, staying in their positions, not letting anybody get outside of containment. This is going to be the hardest game that they've played all season. They've got to stay in their positions, and they've got to play disciplined ball, do their thing, trust their teammates to do their thing, and they might be able to sneak out of here with a victory.
That brother right there, that really takes our show to the end. And right now we're within that hour mark. We're sitting.
This is the first time ever.
We're looking good. Maybe we're gonna put a couple of minutes on it, front and back with the intro and outro, man. But this is the first time we've been able to nail it down. It just was a little bit of time. I mean, maybe some of those teams not playing this week helped us, but again, we'll make sure we try to keep it in with this hour window, so we're not keeping everybody here forever. But brother, like I said last week and every other episode we've done, the first 5 episodes have been a blast. This 6th episode has been a blast, and thanks for your time, man.
Hey, man, it's been great, man. I appreciate you putting all this together. I'm having a lot of fun doing it, keeping up with everything that's happening. Thanks to everybody that's out there listening as well. We really appreciate all your support. Hang with us through football season, man. This is going to get really, really good. Basketball season's around the corner, man. We're so excited about that. Or I'm excited about basketball season. I know that you are too, Clint. And then, man, we'll see how things roll around the first of the year with baseball too.
Yeah, man. Just stay with us, guys. It's going to be a learning process once we throw in the mix of thing these other sports. We're centrally focused on college football. The basketball season creeps in, and so we're going to see how we can balance this. But guys, thank you so much for listening to the College Sports Hour podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, check out our first 5 episodes on iTunes, Google Play Music, and YouTube under College Sports Hour. You can also find us at heroesmediagroup.com by clicking on the shows tab. Also visit our website at collegesportshour.com, where we continue the college sports conversation, post articles, and give our weekly predictions on what we deem as the most important games of the week. This podcast has been brought to you by our sponsor, McPherson Marketing Group. If you're in the market for anything digital marketing related, check them out on McPhersonMarketingGroup.com. We also want to give a special shout out to all our family and friends who continue to support what we do and give us this time and this little bit of, just so we can vent and talk and enjoy ourselves. So don't forget, guys, to join us next week for another episode of the College Sports Hour.